The best financial advice I have ever received is to just start, to don't be scared.
Mhm,
Like I said, like I mentioned before, I was like actually terrified
mhm.
to start, which is why I never did. But I think just with anything in life, the scarier it is, kind of the more you have to force yourself to start. So just start, whether it's just start saving, whether it's just start paying off your debt, whether it's, start whatever it is that start is in life,
Mhm.
just start, just do it.
Welcome back to the Love and Other Assets Show. My name is Emily, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plenty. My husband and I co-founded Plenty after we began merging finances, and we're shocked to find what a mess that could be. We'd both been in Silicon Valley working in fintech for over a decade each, so we set out to build something better. Today, Plenty is a wealth platform helping modern couples invest and plan for their future together. We bring the investment strategies and products of the wealthy to the everyday household. But we know in relationships, it's not just about the products, it's also about the conversations. And talking about love and money is still very new. So that's what we settled to do in our podcast to hopefully make it a little bit easier for everybody listening. I'm very excited today to welcome a guest whose content I've personally been following for quite some time now. Isha Dang is a content creator with roots as a model, YouTube personality turned financial expert. She embodies the beauty of balance and is dedicated to promoting a lifestyle that creates a healthy mind, body, and soul. Across all social media platforms, she epitomizes the modern, multifaceted woman. Generating an authentic relationship with her community, she addresses real-life issues in finance, beauty, fitness, politics, relationships, and personal care. Her platform is meant to spread well beyond personal empowerment. And in 2020, she even launched her own business, which helps tackle financial independence and accountability through her customized planners, which I have seen and used before. So love this, could not recommend it more. It's great to have this right in front of you to remind you about what's important. As a champion of animal and women's rights, she utilized her social media platform to speak to issues that she is an impassioned advocate for. Thank you so much for making time to come on to our show today.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that you've used the planner before. I love that.
Yeah, it was incredible too, because I think early on, it was hard to figure out where to start with talking about finances. So it was helpful to even just have also approach it too from a values orientation of what's most important, and then how do you remind yourself of what's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Thanks.
So I'm so curious. You started off your career in broadcast journalism. What made you decide to build your own brand around inspiring people to be their best selves?
Yeah, I think back when YouTube first started and social media first started, a lot of us didn't expect that this would end up being our career. So I have my master's in broadcast journalism, which then ended up with me working with Maxim Magazine, Fox Sports, and I realized that I I have a problem with people telling me what to do. So at that time when I was working at Fox Sports, which is, very red tape heavy, it's like network
Yeah.
television, right? So I started a YouTube channel on the side just for fun because that was kind of like my creative outlet.
Mm.
And it kind of just took off. And fortunately, fortunately, I think I was actually fired from Fox Sports. That whole section was a little blurry. So I'm like, okay, cool. I think this is giving me an opportunity to, see exactly what this YouTube thing is about.
Mhm.
And that kind of started my YouTube journey. And I've taken a lot of like life transitions, just personally or online. And I started off YouTube very heavily geared towards the men because that was my base at the time. And then a couple years later, it was beauty, fashion. And then a couple years after that, it turned into finances, which is like honestly the last thing I thought would end up being kind of the career I would take. But yeah, that's where we are today.
Seems like it was a message from the universe, and what a shame it would be had you never been able to help as many people as you have now, especially in the world of finances, as well as just fitness and how to live a well-rounded life.
Yeah, it's wild to be, I think, probably the first woman of color to talk about finances on social media ever. That's
What was
good.
it yeah, what was it like starting off? And then how did you kind of find your way into talking about finances? Because I agree, I feel like it's different when it's not like, "Oh, it's, pale male,
Yeah.
60-year-olds talking about what works, having grown up in a certain situation," versus I think hearing from people and hearing the stories of people where it's like, "Yeah, I'm like you, starting off." And I think it's so powerful that you've brought that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think throughout my entire content creator journey, the thing that has, even though I'm touching on different aspects, the thing that has always been rooted in my videos and what I share is just like what I'm going through in life is just what I share. So randomly, there's this thing every Christmas that's called Vlogmas, where YouTubers just vlog every single day of their life. And this was in I think 2019. It's horrible. It is so stressful. I would not recommend it. I actually stopped doing it after that year, but I think it was 2017. I was vlogging about how I was dog sitting because I needed to make money because I couldn't afford my student loans.
Mhm.
And there I shared literally on the screen how much debt I was in.
Mhm.
And I think in my grad school debt, I had accumulated $150,000 and I like shared that. And I didn't think anything of it when I posted the video because I'm not someone that gets embarrassed. So sharing that I'm in debt, like I know that most people in America are in debt. So why would I feel embarrassed about sharing it? So I didn't think anything of it at the time, but the moment that video posted, people finally felt like they were seen. Like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, someone's finally talking about dad. Wow, someone is actually struggling with money.
Yeah.
That was like a total new experience for people, especially online. And even to this day, I'm sometimes the only person in people's lives that talks about money. So that was kind of like the catalyst to where we are now.
Yeah. I know, you mentioned that it's not something that for you, you're necessarily embarrassed about. What did you hear from people who first watched that video where you were like, "Oh, wow, I think people really need more of this?"
Yeah, I mean, just going through I haven't scrolled through the comment section in a while because it's an old video, but I distinctly remember feeling, wow, like people saying, thank you for sharing this. I feel so isolated in my own debt or financial journey. And
Yeah.
just you posting this makes me feel seen and it makes me feel like I'm not alone.
Mm.
And that was honestly never the intention. I
Yeah.
was just like, here, I just need to post a video. Here it is. But I think that's also why people like to engage in, so financial videos online is because it's a way for them to feel seen. It's a way for them to be educated without having to put themselves out there if they're not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like really cool that now there's so much access to financial learnings and wealth and knowledge that I just like I wish it was there when I started, but now that I'm just seeing all these financial content creators is actually like really cool.
Yeah. And you started with talking about the amount of student debt that you had. Where did it go from there? How did you think about what else to share? How to support people too? Because, with the planners, with your guides, you have moved into the space of really giving people easy to follow tips.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was really easy the moment that I posted the video. The month before, I actually decided that it was like time to get my financial life in order. And that was kind of just like seeing those comments was the catalyst for me just posting monthly or sometimes weekly videos about where I was financially. So it started off with me sharing my monthly budgets, which I did for a few years.
Mhm.
And then also how I was making money because I had to take like 3 different jobs just to be able to afford rent and my student loans, or, how to navigate months where I didn't get paid or me struggling to get paid from a brand that didn't pay me for 2 years. So it
Mhm.
was actually pretty easy because like I said, all my content content just revolves around what's going on in my life currently. And for 2, 3 years, the only thing that was going on in my life was me trying to get out of debt.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really easy and people really loved it. And then after I got out of debt, I mean, what's the next step? You fully fund your emergency fund. And then after I fully funded my emergency fund, I was engaged. So then I had to save for a wedding. After I saved for a wedding, the next year I bought a house, which was a disaster. And people watched that disaster and how much buying a house and all the insurance and all the fixer uppers, all that cost.
Yeah.
And now it's just kind of figuring out, like, I'm kind of in my slow girl financial era where I spent like 6 years paying off debt, fully funding an emergency fund, cash flowing a wedding, paying for a house. And now it's like, okay, it's time to chill out. And now it's just kind of just educating people on things, like deep diving more on things that I wasn't knowledgeable about. So right now we're kind of doing a 5-week series on credit card basics, which, you know, people don't know about because that's not something we're taught. So now it's kind of just going back to the basics, promoting my planner, and, you know, talking about how we can save up for things for the future and do things for fun, but responsibly financially.
Yeah. And I know one thing that for me, you were the first person that I found online that talked about managing money with a partner. Especially, I think, when so much of the content is like, well, you know, you should have a joint account. And that's such a thin conversation because managing money is more than just a joint checking account. And there's so many accounts and not, you know, there's no one size fits all. So I'm curious, how did you think also about both how you managed money with your partner through the different chapters of your relationship and then how you thought about talking about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, everything was, first of all, I am a child of divorce. So whether we had gotten married or not, or just like together, the idea of having 1 or 2 joint accounts was just not going to happen. Not that I think I'm going to get divorced. It's just like, just from my experience growing up, both of my parents struggled after the divorce because financially they couldn't figure themselves out. So I wanted to make sure that, yes, we did have a joint account together for joint expenses, but what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. And that's how it's been working for us. And I feel like a lot of people think that once you get married, everything must be joined. And that might work for some people. I know one of my girlfriends, that is how they live their life as a married couple. And that works for them. For me, I don't want to know what you're spending your money on as long as us as a family are taken care of. That's all that matters to me. So it's also just giving people another option, and sharing, like, just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I feel like a lot of times in personal finance, people forget to take the personal aspect of it. And it's just like, you have to do it this way because it works for me. No, it's that didn't work for me when I was getting out of debt. And I don't expect any of that to work for you directly. So here's what I'm doing. Take what you want and like rework it to make sure that it works seamlessly into your life.
And, you know, when you hear from couples who are watching your show, what are the different ways that you've heard other couples also manage their money, or from even your friends?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many complexities to finances in relationships, because not only is that there the aspect of, are we having a joint account? Are we keeping our individual accounts? But also, like, what if someone is making more money? I mean, for a lot of my girlfriends, we are the breadwinners of our relationship. And so how does that in turn, you know, how does that change the dynamics of us as a couple and us financially? So I have a girlfriend who bought a house and her husband pays her rent, and that's how it works for them. Or again, my other girlfriend, everything is just split in half. Whether, I don't know how it works other than that, but that's just how it is. And for us, you know, we split the main things in half, but if, you know, we go out to dinner, maybe I'll pay and that's fine. Or maybe we go out to get groceries and my husband will pay, and that's fine. We don't do tit for tat, let me pay you back. But some people do that and that works for them. There's just like, it's so much more complex,
Mhm.
but that's also kind of like the fun of it, where you can test out what works for you and just like kick out the ideas that just aren't for you as a couple.
Yeah. So when you two are talking about, what you're spending or what your goals are together, how do you guys navigate that conversation?
Well, I navigate it. I mean, I think also the idea that both partners have to be super involved in the finances is um ideal maybe, but it doesn't work for us as a couple personally. Like
Mhm.
I am very open about money. I made a career off of that. He is not.
Mm.
It makes him very uncomfortable to talk about. So when we have these conversations of, okay, what's our goal for next year, the next couple years, he'll tell me what his goal is and I'll be like, okay, cool. I will save up for that. Or, I am in charge of our accounts jointly. So
Mhm.
whenever you get paid, I'm going to sprinkle all over throughout our accounts, and just know that when you want your goal to be done, it'll be done,
Yeah.
because that's just how I am. So sometimes as a couple, one person needs to take charge. And in my relationship, that's how it is.
Yeah, and we've actually seen that come through in the data over and over. So there was a great study a few years ago from UBS, the bank, and they actually said that in relationships, only 18% of relationships had partners where they were equally making financial decisions. That means, in more than 80%, actually, that's not the case. One person takes the driver's seat. The way we've always seen it is it's important to at least be a passenger and to at least know what's going on, but it's much more common that there is one person driving these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in some cases, like you're forcing your partner to know what's going on. Cause I know
Yeah.
people that would just rather out of sight, out of mind. They don't want to deal with it. Just make sure you're not, doing anything shady with my money.
Yeah.
Where that other partner has to like sit down and be like, I am going to take X, Y, and Z out of your bank account for this goal that you set for yourself. I'm just letting you know. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, but also what you see, social media facing is that couples should work together equally jointly. And that's, like
Yeah.
you said, not the case.
Yeah. Much more rare. I think definitely it also requires that both people are equally as interested as well as have equal amounts of knowledge, which once you start to layer that, the probability
Yeah.
is fairly low that that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it also is just, I know a couple that has my planner, and it scares them as a couple to like break down their financials. So they're just starting with like basic groceries. That's how they're going into these like weekly conversations, is like, okay, how much do we want to spend on groceries? Let me build a menu and we're going to track the groceries.
Yeah.
And that's their way of getting their feet wet into, talking about finances as a couple.
Yeah. So how did you navigate it with, you're starting off, you're really used to managing your own money, and you're now getting to the point where you're like, oh, there's actually a lot of we and us. So how did you navigate making sure your partner was part of the conversation, figuring out what might work for the two of you?
I mean, I think, well, we just got married 2 years ago. So that's when we first started joining our um, combined expenses into a joint account. So I still think that we're starting to like get used to it. But honestly, I just take charge. I know exactly what he wants. I know exactly what I want. I know exactly our, couple goals, and I just go from there. So for me, I manage his money and our money the same way that I manage my money.
Mhm.
And anytime I get paid, because we are both in the same kind of like content creator realm, that I have a paycheck routine, and that paycheck routine I use for myself and I use for him.
Mhm.
And that's just like, it's very like ABCD,
Yeah.
where I know exactly once we get any amount of money, I know where one thing goes, the other thing goes, the other thing goes, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it just makes it easy for me. It makes it easy for him because he knows what's about to happen.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, whenever we're fully funded for a trip, it'll be a nice surprise for him, because I don't even think he checks those bank accounts. So it's nice.
Yeah. And what I also love too is that there's clearly so much trust here and openness. And there is still kind of maintaining both that independence and togetherness, which I think sometimes people who say like, oh, why do you have individual accounts at all? Why are you hiding? It sounds like that's actually not an issue at all. It's completely transparent and open.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if anything, I don't consider it hiding at all. I think that's um, a very like unhelpful assumption
Mhm.
to think that I want to keep my account because I'm hiding something. No, it's just as we want to keep things separately. I don't want, if it's coming from my account, my personal account, and I want to buy something that's $500, I'm not going to ask him for permission because that's my money.
Yeah.
If it were to come out of our joint account for anything,
Mhm.
then I would ask for permission. So
Mhm.
for me, it kind of just like makes things for me very cut and dry.
Mhm.
Anything out of my account is my money. Anything
Yeah.
out of your account is your money. Joint account is family money.
Yeah.
And that's where we have that discussion.
Yeah. I love that. And, when you're having those conversations, are there any things that you guys have tried out to make it easier to have those conversations or to make it more fun to have those conversations?
No, he does not find any fun in talking about financial choices.
Real talk.
No, like
Yeah.
literally. At the beginning of every year, we set our goals.
Mhm.
And then anytime I take out large amount of money from his account, mostly for taxes, because we as like independent contractors have to take out money for taxes, I let him know very clearly, today I'm taking this amount of money out.
Mhm.
And that's all he really cares to know about. And that's makes my life easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you are managing your own money, are there any rules or principles that you follow as you think about how to keep yourself on track?
Yeah. I mean, I have very much a paycheck routine that happens every single time I get paid.
Mhm.
30% goes to taxes. That's put in a high yield savings account for taxes. 20% then goes to my management fee, which not everyone has to pay for, but that's something I have to do.
Mhm.
The remainder balance of that 10% goes into our joint checking. So anytime either one of us get paid, 10% of that goes to our joint checking for family expenses.
Mhm.
And then after that, that's when I can have fun with money to spend on myself or go towards investments or other financial goals. So it's very clear cut as to where my money goes every single
Mhm.
month.
And for your own money that you do have left over, how do you decide what to spend, what to save, or what to invest?
Well, the first thing I do is I have very clear, like, financial goals at the beginning of every year.
Mhm.
And every time I get paid, which sometimes is a lot, sometimes I don't get paid a month at all.
Mhm.
But I always prioritize my investments first.
Mhm.
So, I always try to accomplish my monthly financial investment goals.
Mhm.
And then once that's done, then I can save up for other things like even though I still have a few more years, like I'm currently saving up for my 40th birthday because who
Mhm.
knows what I want to do. Or I'm saving up for like whenever Beyonce announces her tour, I'm saving up for that. Or every year we save up for the doggy dental. So
Yeah.
once I get my money and know how much I have, whether it's put in my checking or put into investments accounts,
Mhm.
I always invest first. Once I hit my investment goals for the month, then I figure out what other savings goals I want to put my money towards.
Yeah. I'm so curious too, as you look back, do you have any tips for mistakes to avoid for people either managing money on their own or within partnership?
I think the only mistake really is just not being flexible and knowing when something isn't working for you. So for me, when I first started my debt free journey specifically,
Mhm.
I was very much convinced that paying everything in cash was the way to go.
Mhm.
That frankly stressed me out.
Yeah.
I did not like that at all, but I like continued to push with it because that's what I was told was financially the best thing. But it wasn't until I switched to like just simply using a debit card, like that made things easier for me. So
Mhm.
it's just realizing when something doesn't work and switching. And that's like also with like debt payoff. Are you an avalanche girly or a snowball method girly? Test
Mhm.
them both out, see which one works for you and which doesn't, and then go with that route. It's just like being flexible.
Yeah. And also what I love about that is really reflecting and to your note about personal finance, making it personal, that it
Yeah.
is about what works best for you and not necessarily what works for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's a little frustrating because when it comes to finances, you want to see things happen quickly, but that's not the case with money at all, whether you're getting in debt or saving up for a wedding or investing. It's going to take a while, and it's also going to take a while for you to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. So you just have to be patient.
Are there things that you have done to help keep yourself motivated, given that some of the bigger financial things, it does take time, doesn't just happen overnight?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I have no problem spending money on myself when I feel like I deserve it. But I think more importantly, the way I go about saving up for long-term goals
Mhm.
is I like to build myself a nice little sinking fund flow chart
Mhm.
to where every time I reach my monthly goal, I highlight it in my planner. And to me, it's like a game. Like I win this month, I win that month. And then when
Yeah.
everything is highlighted, it just makes me very happy.
Mhm.
And then also on maybe months where I'm doing very well and accomplish all of my goals, I will treat myself to a spa day. I will treat myself to something that I wanted for a long time.
Mhm.
But I also have kind of the restraint to not buy things when I know I can't afford them.
Mhm.
So it's always like kind of sprinkling treat yourself moments
Mhm.
into your financial journeys. Because you can invest and save and all that stuff is fun, but like you're gonna like have this itch to like spend money.
Yeah.
Just make sure it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that message, especially that it's not about never treating yourself. You can still sprinkle that in.
Yeah. It's just to do it responsibly.
And I'm curious, is there anything that you said to yourself to help keep yourself going with, the budgeting and tracking your expenses? Because I I know that when I first started off, it didn't feel great. It was a little uncomfortable. It was a
Yeah.
little bit, just like, oh wow, can I actually change this? Maybe I can. It's hard to confront. So what helped you keep going?
So there was a moment in which I decided to start my debt-free journey, and that moment was when one of my youngest dog, Luke, had
Mhm.
to go into emergency surgery and I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for my then boyfriend at the time, now husband, who paid for it, he was in Japan, so we had to make that work somehow.
Yeah.
We would have had to euthanize our one-year-old dog.
Mhm.
And for me, that was the moment where I was like, I almost killed a member of my family because I wasn't financially responsible.
Mhm.
So anytime I like got frustrated or I wanted to give up, I have a walking reminder as to why I'm doing this. And he's happy and healthy. And I think he's 7 or 8 now.
Mhm.
And I think it's just always important to remember what your why is. Like, why are you dedicating yourself? Why are you sacrificing time with your friends,
Mhm.
trips with their family in order to get your financial health in order? Without that why, it is really easy to go off the rails.
Mhm.
Fortunately, my why was powerful enough to where I still to this day haven't gone completely bonkers with my
Mhm.
money, but that's always really important.
How did you navigate figuring out what your why was and then reminding yourself of what your why is?
I mean, when you almost have to kill something, it's very easy. Like
Yeah.
it's a very easy light bulb moment. And I feel like a lot of those why moments are light bulb moments where it just finally hits you.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, before then, I was struggling with money. Before then, there was months where I had to tell my landlord I wasn't going to pay on time. There were months where I had to sell dresses
Mhm.
to pay rent. There was months where I felt like I put myself in really dangerous situations in order to make money. And none of that stuck, right? None of that stuck
Yeah.
until my dog almost died.
Mhm.
So I can't tell you why that was the moment.
Mhm.
But it's always kind of just a ding moment in people's minds. And you just have to pay attention to that.
If you could speak to your younger self a year before that moment, what might you have said to her?
Oh, girl, you are a mess. You are messy. No, I think it's kind of so the reason why it took me so long besides the dog thing to get my financial life in order was because I was like actually scared to look at my bank account.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared to figure out how much debt I was in because I knew I was in so much of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would just say to myself, just look.
Yeah.
Just look. Because the moment I looked at exactly how much debt I was in, the power that scariness had over me disappeared. Like literally it disappeared. Like I cannot explain to you how terrified I was to admit that I was in debt. But the moment I checked into my AES success account and said, okay, you have $150,000 of student loan debt right there. The power of that, the scariness of that went away and I was able to focus. So I would have said to myself, just look, just start. It's not that scary. And for a lot of people, that moment in itself is the scariest part, like going through your bank account. That's the scariest thing. But once you take away its power, it's really easy to just move forward.
I absolutely love that so much. I think so much. We hear this a lot too. I think especially when people feel like they should be in a different place, of avoiding it is a very natural human instinct, is avoiding the pain of it. But I love that it's the way you framed it is reclaiming your power and not giving the situation power over you.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard because money is so personal, but it honestly controls a lot of aspects of our life. So might as well get it over with now and start, living the life that you deserve.
Love that. So as you think about, the next 5 years, what are some of the goals that you're really excited to work towards, either independently or with your husband?
I think it's hard to plan financial goals for me because our lives change so drastically. But the house that we bought last year, I would really love to get rid of it. I would really love to get rid of it within the next 5 years. Yeah. It's so funny because, speaking of things that we're learning, like I am both a homeowner and a renter. And I don't know, like renting is actually not that bad. I just had a flood in my rental that we're in right now, and I didn't have to take care of it. I called the leasing office and that was fine. Whereas last year you saw, I was a total mess having to do all these things on my own. So I would love to get rid of that. And then, honestly, we want to just travel more now that we have a plan for our retirement and our investments. Now it's time to kind of enjoy the fact that we've set ourselves up financially to where that we can have a little fun. So I think traveling together as a couple, maybe taking the dogs to Hawaii, where I'm from, is something I want to do. Just things like that. But it's hard for me to, again, plan that far in advance because our lives change just by the nature of our work so drastically that as long as we have our retirement and investment goals set, we just have money to deal with whatever may pop up in the future.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned there, because I do remember this chapter of going into buying a house and everything. So what was your journey to deciding that you want to even save up for a house, that was a goal, into your whole experience of it?
I mean, buying a house is the American dream, isn't it?
That's what everyone says.
That's what everyone says. Buying a house is the epitome of financial health. And I think nowadays it's just not the case. And I think just specifically with my personal experience, buying a house was probably the worst financial decision I've ever made. But again, I am in a place financially in other aspects of my life to where that huge financial mistake isn't haunting me as much as it might be someone else that maybe doesn't have an emergency fund or maybe doesn't have investments every month that they put towards. So yeah, girl, I don't know. It was something I thought was my next step in my financial journey, and I took it. And a little part of me knew or thought that maybe this was a mistake, and it ended up being a mistake.
What about it made it a mistake?
Well, first of all, we bought in Houston, where my husband is from. And I would say that if you are planning to move someplace just because it's cheaper, we live in LA. We thought Houston would be a better financial decision. But what people don't take into account is the lifestyle change. And for me, the cost of living in California is worth it. Not to talk badly about Texas, not to talk badly about Houston. I love Houston. We just came back from there, but living there is different. So if you're planning to move someplace because it's cheaper, I would heavily consider you realizing the social aspect you might be losing going someplace else. And then also, I think that the housing costs really got us. Like in LA, you would pay 1.5 for a fixer upper, but in Houston, we got a fixer upper for under 500,000, and we were like, this is amazing. Like we did it. We made it. And people in Houston were like, that is a lot of money. And we were thinking to ourselves, like, relative to where we're from, it's not. But I think I just probably should have slowed my roll a little bit, not made so many huge financial decisions back to back to back. Again, paying off the debt, fully funding an emergency fund, cash flowing a wedding, saving up for a down payment of the house, all happened consecutively back to back year after year. I probably just should have relaxed. But I was just so like, this is my final step to living the American dream. And that American dream just like isn't really for me at this moment. So yeah, that housing situation really like knocked some sense into me for sure. So that's why when people are like, I want to buy a house, I feel so guilty not buying a house. I hate renting. I just have to remind them, like, you don't have to pay for flood insurance. You don't have to pay for maintenance. Like renting has its benefits. I understand buying a house, but I also understand if like renting is the thing that's going to happen for the rest of your life, enjoy it. Like, see the benefits of it is all I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. I published a blog post a little bit ago talking about when your house isn't the best investment. Explicitly because we hear from so many couples, they feel almost guilty or behind. Or like, oh, we don't own a house yet. Maybe we live in, especially like an LA or in New York or San Francisco where the cost is so high. And we hear from so many couples, they feel like something's missing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so common.
Yeah, 100%. But I think just anything finance related is just important to step back and just double check whether that advice is right for you. That advice was not right for me. And I learned that the most expensive way and the hardest way. But now I know. And if we were to ever buy in LA, or if, I would love to buy property, in Hawaii so I can go home more often, that would be something that I would heavily have to consider. So yeah, man.
What are the 3 things that you learned from this home buying experience where you're like, this is what is going to carry me forward anytime I think about buying a house again in the future?
Well, the cost of saving is going to have to be more than 20%. Whether you put down 20% or not, you're going to spend more than 20% updating the house, on insurance, on everything. So the fact that people say like, save up 20%, no, you need to save 30%. And in LA, that's like $500,000. So I think I'm good there. But also just kind of like, what is your lifestyle? We travel a lot. We don't know, honestly, where we're going to be in the next year, like physically, location wise. So why did we think buying a house was a good idea versus renting? Once our lease is up, we can go wherever. It's not a big deal. So I think those main 2 things, honestly, would be the thing pushing me forward to be very cautious about buying a house later in life. But again, who knows? Who knows what happens, where we are as a couple, where we are work wise, where we are financially. Maybe like buying a house in LA won't be that big of a deal in a couple years. But as of right now, I'm slowing my roll.
And there's a lot of freedom. I know when Channing and I, during COVID, we decided to go travel for 2 years. It was much easier for us than some of our friends who had actually just recently bought houses because they were worried about not having the income, still keeping to pay for the mortgage and property taxes. And we were like, anywhere we travel, we'll pay less rent than we're all
Yeah.
paying right now. So actually,
Exactly.
we're all up.
Yeah, exactly. There's just pros and cons to both. But there'll normally be more pros depending on where you are in your life and where you are in the US too.
Yeah.
So
Well, to wrap up our show, I had 4 questions as part of a lightning round, if that works for you.
okay.
First one, what's the best financial advice you ever received?
The best financial advice I have ever received is to just start, to don't be scared. Like I said, like I mentioned before, I was like actually terrified to start, which is why I never did. But I think just with anything in life, the scarier it is, kind of the more you have to force yourself to start. So just start, whether it's just start saving, whether it's just start paying off your debt, whether it's, start whatever it is that start is in life, just start, just do it.
Just start. Love it.
Yeah, just start. Easy.
What is the most romantic gesture that your husband can do without spending any money?
I mean, you're talking to an introvert who never leaves the house. So like he doesn't have to do anything really, just cook and put on a movie. And I am happy. I'm so happy with that. So that's easy.
Love that. And what is your favorite budget friendly date that you guys do?
Our favorite budget friendly date is honestly kind of just taking the dogs maybe to the beach or something. Anything we do as a family, including the dogs, is always kind of the best date.
Awesome. Last one. You mentioned you're saving up for your 40th birthday celebration. What are some things you're considering?
Oh, girl. I don't know. We're going to see what I feel in 3 years, but it's either going to be a trip. It's either going to be a huge party or it might be a mini facelift. So we're going to see. I'm saving up for all of that. Or it could be all 3, depending on how much is in that savings account. Yeah. we're going to see in 3 years how I feel.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making time to share your story with everybody. I love that message of just start. It's so powerful in so many ways. Just look too. So thank you again for making time for everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.